Hello, everyone. Really appreciate you joining me today on the AiCR Exchange. I am honored to have my first trio of guests on the show. Dr. Jonathan DeCoster, Kathleen Miller, and Miles Gabrielli Burke. They all are affiliated with the University of New England, and I'm honored to have them on the show. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
So, I got to lift up the curtain a little bit. I've known Jonathan since he was 7 years old, and of course, I was 7 years old at the time. And we've been close friends ever since. And he is a history professor at the University of New England. So he came to me and said, "Hey, my students do historical document research." I'm like, wow, what a coincidence. I got a platform that does that. Let's talk and figure out how to do it. Now, I'm glad you've been using it for a little bit. But I really don't know exactly what you are doing with it. So I'd love to hear more about what historical document research you do and how's that work. So it's all on you, Jonathan. Go for it.
Yeah, well, I'm a professor, so I would love to just talk about it endlessly. So I'm a history professor here at the University of New England. And I spend a lot of time thinking about how I should approach the teaching of history and what it is that I want my students to do and how I should give them those kinds of experiences. And so the model that I'm working on right now is something that I'm calling community engaged research and learning. And the idea is to work with community partners to develop projects where I can bring my expertise as a historian and as a scholar, but also the students can get involved in working on those projects. And this has a lot of benefits. We're providing a service to community organizations like historical societies and archives and so forth. And it's beneficial for the students because instead of their learning being just a performance for me, they're actually doing something that's real. They're providing something and producing some kind of tangible product that someone needs. And in the case of a student like Miles, who is a history major and wants to work in the field of history, he's getting real experience doing the kinds of things that might help him get a job in the future.
All right, so I got to stop you right there. Let me interrupt you because I'm very curious about this, okay? When I used to go to school, I would sit in a chair, I would follow the thing, do my homework, and go home and forget about it. I'm going to call it interactive learning. That's probably me just saying something stupid, but it sounds like it's really interactive learning. Is that typical in your school? And is that how school's changed, or are you doing something different?
Well, let's hear the student perspective.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely not typical. I don't know. The history department is really good about, doing stuff like that. For example, this semester I took History 313, which is Native American history. And we worked with the Abbey Museum, which is in Bar Harbor, I believe. Mm-hmm. And we split up into groups and we each had our own projects. And for mine, they sent over some photos of some artifacts with, like a sentence worth of information. And it was find as much as you can in a semester. And then in other classes, I've made podcasts. We've gone to archives. We've, been to the Mills Museum here in Biddeford and taken a tour. I've really enjoyed just getting to be able to work hands-on with like documents and such. In my other class with him this semester, which was just U.S. history, my group, we did a digitization project where we met up with like a local historian, and he had tons of documents and we digitized them, and then at the end we interviewed him, and it was just a really cool process.
That is awesome. So what I'm hearing is you getting out there and really looking at things and getting hands-on experience, and I guess that's the benefit of being in the history world because you can actually do more things. Well, with mathematics, it's like, as an example, it's more like classroom work. So it's exciting to hear that difference. So
Yeah, I mean,
tell me a little bit more, please.
a while though to come to this model because actually I had a hard time figuring out how to take history out of the classroom because there's not a history factory down the street. Not a lot of businesses who are looking to hire a lot of historians. So it took me a while to figure out what kinds of projects, who can the partners be, and what kind of projects can the students do where they're going to be actually working with history. But, as Miles mentioned, in the case of that, the course that collaborated with the Abbey Museum, those were projects that the Abbey Museum needed to have done. We weren't inventing something for the students to do just for the sake of having the students do it. It takes a little bit of creativity to identify where are those needs out there where the students can really work like my research assistants. And one of those areas that Miles just mentioned, can you talk more about that digitization project?
Yeah, so we worked with Peter McFeeters, who is a local historian in Biddeford Pool, and he brought us like 1,000 menus from a local hotel, and it was
1,000 menus from a hotel.
Yeah, Kathleen's got some right here.
But I gotta ask this. First of all, why would anyone keep 1,000 menus and actually store them in a spot where you can actually? How old are these menus?
They're from 1938, and there aren't 1,000 of them.
There's a lot.
Hold on. I have to ask this question. Why did someone store and retain for almost 100 years menus?
Well, I can say a little bit about that. I don't know if this was the hotel Peter is married to someone whose family has been in Biddeford Pool for centuries and used to someone in her family ran an inn that was in this area. And so one of the other history classes was looking at tourism in this area. And they were talking to, he came to visit another class and talked about the history of the inns in the area. And he has become kind of a de facto collector of these materials for different people, have given. He's sort of holding on to them as a person who cares about history and is making these things accessible to people and sharing them with other people. So we're kind of acting as a partner to him, that we're helping to provide a little bit more access and give students an opportunity to explore these materials as well.
So that's one of the big benefits of you being in Maine. You have that history right at your doorstep. So are you saying that you work with, is it a local historian? Is that a way to just refer him to? Or
I don't know that he would refer to himself as a historian. I think he would refer to himself as a history lover, someone who has taken kind of a community role as a collector of history. I don't think he didn't go to college, right?
No, he dropped out.
Yeah. He told it. He was here when this was St. Francis College, he was here for a year, and then he's in real estate now, but I believe he was a builder. He did. Yep. Yeah. So he's not a person who studied history at all, really. He just was interested.
Isn't that always the case? So I live in Easton, Pennsylvania, and in a lot of historic areas. And in my town, there's a local guy that's done a very similar thing to you, is gathered up all the elements and saved them and researched and did this. And it's really a cool thing to have in that. But I just never thought menus would be on the list. So
well, I think
I have an obvious question. Excuse me, Jonathan. I'm sorry. I got it. What is the what is on the menu? What can I order on that?
Well, if it were June 30th, 1930, oh, actually, sorry, this is 1939. This one has a typo. It has the wrong year, but it's actually, they're all from 1939. The supper menu, which was from 6 to 7 p.m., you could enjoy clam juice, tomato juice cocktail, fish chowder, consomme, steamed clams, fried scallops, tartar sauce, chicken a la king, broiled sirloin steak, Spanish omelet, assorted cold cuts, including corned beef, ham, lamb, chicken, cottage fried potatoes, green string beans, stewed corn, lettuce salad with Russian dressing, hot rolls, and an assortment of desserts, including apple pie, custard pie, cornstarch custard pudding, ginger snaps, date sticks, fresh strawberries, sugar cake, and of course, tea, coffee, and milk.
So that's about as main as you get. It doesn't get much more main than that menu.
There isn't a lobster on there, but
That's true.
But yes.
Of course. So, Miles, I interrupted you with that menu because that threw me for a loop there for a second. So what are you doing with these menus?
So my group digitized some of them. We scanned them, and then we did the metadata for them, which is a little tedious. It's inputting, a ton of numbers for each menu. And if you mess a number up, you have to go back and redo it all. And then we transcribed the menus and uploaded them to a collection site called Omeka that we use for a lot of our historical documents here. And then after that, we interviewed Peter about his, experience in Biddeford Pool and like what got him interested in history and all sorts of stuff.
That's awesome. That sounds like a fantastic way to learn.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I love it because you get to have hands-on experience with these, historical documents, and you get to talk to local people in the community who, will know more than I will ever know about it.
Is this typically what you have been doing, Jonathan, or are you trying to do more of it? It's been 40 years since I've been in a classroom, so it's hard for me to get reference anymore. I can't remember, but tell me about how you got to this level and where you're going.
Yeah, so I mean, I think probably most good teachers and professors are trying to use some of what we call active learning. The old-fashioned idea of a teacher just lecturing the whole time. Probably a lot of that still happens, but I think most of us know that that's not the most effective method. So there are lots of ways that teachers can try to make the learning more active. I think what's more novel about what we're trying to do here is, number one, finding ways to take the humanities, to take history, and have students experience it in an applied setting. So again, out in the field, creating products that really exist out there, and doing so in partnership with these community organizations, so that the organizations are, they're helping us by giving our students these experiences, and then we're actually contributing to the needs of our community, and students are kind of digging in to the local place and learning about it. And if I can get philosophical about it for a second,
please.
There's tremendous value in what we might think of as a more traditional historical research, where, let's say I look up James Madison's notes about the Constitutional Convention, and those are an invaluable source for helping me know, like, what were those men thinking and what were their intentions when they wrote the Constitution. And so that's kind of one source that lets me dig into that person's mind, and that's really valuable. But of course, most people don't have that kind of influence, and most people don't leave those kinds of sources behind. Their sources are not preserved. So what these kinds of projects in some cases are allowing us to do is to capture more of everyday life and people who don't necessarily show up in the conventional archives. You know, these menus, like you ask a very good question, who saves these things? Why does someone have them in their collection? And, you know, Peter, he's not a professional historian. He's not a professional archive. So we're creating this kind of unique opportunity to allow people in the community to participate in the preservation and the telling of history, and to be telling stories that are not really captured by more of the top-down traditional approach.
And stories that matter to them.
Right.
Like, it's not us necessarily defining what the story is. It's like other people saying, this is the history that matters to us, which I think
That's
is
fantastic.
interesting.
Am I correct that Biddeford, Maine was founded in 1616? Does that sound right?
Yeah, so we've been kind of rolling as though your audience knows Biddeford and knows Biddeford Pool. Yeah, so we're up here in New England, where certainly the colonial history goes back a long ways, and then Miles took my course about Wabanaki history, which goes back thousands of years. But yeah, in fact, what's that?
I was just going to jump into that and say we have archaeological evidence from this campus that there were Wabanaki people, at least, you know, using this site for fishing and hunting and other purposes, like 3,000 to 4,000 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and so there's deep history, and we have courses that do archaeology right on the campus. And then, yeah, the colonial history goes back to, I mean, really the late 15th and early 16th centuries, but permanent English colonization going back to the early 1600s.
You know, it's so funny.
And
much conflict.
Yeah, and then the more modern history of this area is, number one, tied to the Industrial Revolution and early textile mills, where Biddeford was once a major manufacturing center. And then where we are in our campus is kind of a section of Biddeford called Biddeford Pool, which is right on the water and has been a tourism destination for probably 150 years. There used to be, you know, large kind of Gilded Age hotels and things like that.
You should come
So
visit, Joe.
it's first of all, it's fascinating. You know that America is old. You know, obviously, Biddeford, hundreds of years, and even my house, I'm fortunate enough to live in a historic house. My house is about 220 years old, and I love it. But I go over to England quite often, and it level sets me. I'm like, 220 years is nothing. It's thousands of years. Just like King Charles said, but a week ago, he was congratulating us on a 250-year anniversary coming up, and as he said in England a few days ago, which is very true. But having an area that it's been around with so much history, at least on the colonial side, and forget about the prior to the colonial's history, is just crazy. So it gives you a lot of opportunities to really have those immersive learning experiences you're talking about.
And if you're interested, I would like to show you some of that digitization process. And I know, you know, we're not here just to advertise AiCR, but it has been a useful tool for us that I can show you some of those results.
Love it. Let's do it. Let's
Okay.
do it. Let's do that. Let me know when you share your screen, and I'll put you up there. This is a first for the AiCR Exchange. First time we're ever showing our screen.
Okay.
There it is.
Okay.
There it is.
Great. Okay, so a little bit of background. Something that I often have to explain to my students who have lived in an era where everything is digitized, and I have to remind them that, you know, things are not born in the digital world, and digitization doesn't happen automatically, and it doesn't happen for free. There's a process of turning historical records into something that can be searched on the internet, and the text can be recognized. And it takes time and money and effort to do so. And so, for example, we still have many, many historical records that are, in hard copy. And look, here's an example of a diary kept by a girl who worked in Biddeford's mills in the late 1800s. And you can see that, my students actually have a hard time even reading cursive handwriting because it's unfamiliar to them. And computer programs are not great at reading it either. And now I'll show you, this is a really unfair example, but this is a document from Florida in the 1500s. And this was written by someone who was actually like in danger of his life at the moment. So anyway, the point is some historical
I'll love to hear that story one of these days.
Yeah, so he was in a big rush.
Crazy.
So these texts, taking pictures of them is one thing, but making the text searchable and usable is another thing. And once something does get digitized, then it's visible and it can be used by researchers and it can be used by just people in the community. But there's a process involved. So I'll show you some examples of what it was like to try to digitize one particular text. So actually, let me put you on the spot, Joe. What can you read? Since I know you can actually read cursive. So what does this text look like to you?
And I'm such a transparent person. I've actually seen this document before.
Oh, that's true.
So I have the legs up on it. I know it's from 1770, and I know it's their first name there is Robert. Okay, Robert Gray. I could read that. And I think and this is why I can't read it, but I'm going off my memory because it's been about 7 months since I've seen it. It's a court register.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So when I, as a historian or my students, if we're working on projects, it's one thing to be able to look at the image and read it, but then that means you have to take notes on what you see. And if it's a single court case, that's fine. But what if you want to look at hundreds of court cases and you want to identify trends in them? You really need to have that text be extracted from these images. And you would think that we would be in a place where that is easy, but it's not. So
it's the hardest thing in the world I've ever done.
I'll show you some examples. So this is what
thing.
These are the results. If you use Apple's built-in tool that's built into their OS, not great results, as you can see.
Yeah.
Adobe Reader is kind of a standard tool. It could not even identify that there was text here. If you have the paid version of Acrobat, I don't know, this is kind of worse than nothing.
Yeah, I don't even know how that happened.
Right? It's not able to recognize that these are letters.
Easy.
A little bit better results if you have the document in your Google Drive and then you ask it to convert it into a Word doc or into a Google Doc. But that's
using Gemini.
I'm assuming that's the back end engine. All you're doing from an interface standpoint is you're telling it open this PDF as a Google Doc.
Correct.
And it can be time consuming wait for it to process each of these. And I've not been paid for this demonstration. This is just legitimate historical research. These are the results from AiCR. You can see these are substantially better. And I actually did a little side-by-side comparison. So even AiCR is not perfect, but it gets you a lot of the way there. So I've manually corrected it by looking at the original image, and I've highlighted the places where I had to make some corrections. So it's not plug and play. You can't just upload your files and expect it to generate perfect transcriptions, but it saves a lot of time. And this is something else that I'm really excited about. I use the user fields to ask it some questions, and it successfully identified some of the key information. I guess it figured out that this was a court case using its AI engine, and it seems to know what a plaintiff and a defendant are, or at least identified those roles in the text, even though they were only abbreviated. And just as valuable, it can identify towns. So for me as a researcher, if I'm trying to build a database of records specifically related to Biddeford, this could allow me to process, who knows how many dozens, hundreds of court cases at a time, and then screen out the ones that are relevant to my purposes. So it's a pretty big difference.
That is crazy. So hold on. First of all, the check's in the mail, Jonathan. So, well, first of all, this is what I can say. I'll take 100% of the credit, but I did very little of the work. But I'll still take the credit on it. I am very fortunate to be surrounded with such a strong, wonderful team at AiCR. Really smart people that really put their effort into things. And when we started it, I said, we need to be able to read anything that we put into it. Now, when I made that decree, I never in a million years thought that we would put something in from 1770 into it. And even to get as close as we did, it's really a proud moment for me. And I know for the AiCR team, they'll be really excited to see that. But on the other hand, I remember you supplied me with this other document that failed miserably. So let's be honest. It was that store register that was like 8 gigabytes, and 360 pages or whatever. I even sat there and looked at it myself for like 5 minutes. I couldn't read a word out of it. And AiCR did not like that one at all, if I remember correctly. Is that true?
Yeah. So yeah, you're talking about some basically account books from the textile mills. And yeah, I mean, those are harder sources to work with. And honestly, I assigned that to some students. I haven't put the old college try into figuring out if AiCR, I mean, I know it does have that capacity to generate tabular data.
Yes.
So with some massaging, maybe that could work. And that's a good example where if you look at one page or even one account book, it's kind of hard to come to any historical insights from that. But there is a lot of data trapped in those old books that if you could process a lot of it and then you could start to run some analysis of those numbers, that's where you're able to identify, price and cost trends over time. Maybe there's wage information in there and you can try to correlate that with demographics, but you need to have a lot of data to do that kind of quantitative history. And so, that's an area where a product like AiCR could be really important.
So let me ask a couple questions. First of all, Miles, have you used the new document discussion feature yet?
I have not, no. I had issues getting into it, but I think that was on my end. But I've only played around with AiCR for like 20 minutes on another student's computer. So it was, yeah, I have not.
So, well, I welcome you to try it because ultimately, again, this is not an AiCR commercial, but instead of asking the questions during the process, it's like a little chat box. You can actually ask it questions and have a conversation with your documents. And what is also very, very important, we designed it so it does not hallucinate. So if it does not know the answer, it won't make it up. It will say, I don't know what you're talking about. And the example that I use all the time, I'll throw a loan document in there and I'll ask it, what is the airspeed velocity of a swallow? Now, of course, Jonathan is laughing. Now,
because that's a Monty Python reference.
That's right. Kathleen, do you know that reference?
Only no, I don't. Only
I'm a big Monty Python Holy Grail fan. And I actually got the script and I loaded that into AiCR and I asked it, what is the airspeed velocity of a sparrow? It's the bridge keeper. You have to answer 3 questions or you get thrown off into the gorge to die. And surprise, it actually answered it. What do you mean, African or European or laden or unladen? Which I was shocked that it did that. So anyway, the other thing I want to mention that I'm going to
Can I ask?
AiCR, please.
I just am curious because AI hallucinations are such and like as a librarian archivist, that is one of the things that we talk about so much. And
Yep.
how did you get to that?
Hmm.
You know, what did you have to do to get it to be free of hallucinations?
So when we
That's even
process
a
the
fair
document,
question.
yeah, it's a very, very fair question. So when we load the document into AiCR, and then when we process it, we actually extract out all of the data that's necessary. You can call it metadata, you can call it whatever, that is associated with that document or documents. And then you can have conversation with an individual document or document or a group of documents. But we told it to be only exclusively using the reference of the metadata pulled out from the document, and even lean towards, if there's any ambiguity that it's not certain, say that it doesn't know it. We don't want it to think too much. So realistically, the easy solution was just limit its knowledge base that it can. Do not allow it to go out on the internet and search outside, and be conservative in its answer criteria. And so every once in a while you put in a question and it says, I don't know what it is. You get what is it? A false negative, I guess is what I want to say. But I would rather have that than all of a sudden have a monologue about something that has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, I mean,
one
that's
thing
one
you
of the
mentioned,
biggest concerns that we have for sure. Like,
it's
how do we know
it's
it's
very
accurate?
important in the financial industry. The answers that are provided
Right.
have to be precise,
Right.
and not only precise, if we're uncertain, we need to be able to illustrate what confidence that we are precise. So some things we may find it, but we're only 5% certain we're right, and we would rather give you that transparency than
I
pretend that, yeah, we're 100% right.
I find that so interesting, just thinking about the parallels between, librarianship and the financial industry, like, because we're with you there. And I wouldn't like that would not be a normal thing that I would think, oh yes, we have so much in common with what you're doing. But I mean, this has been an interesting experiment, just kind of thinking about that.
I want to hear more about you as a librarian. Tell me about what you're doing. Are you using some sort of intelligent document processing? Please give me all the information.
So I'll be really transparent and say I'm pretty on the anti-AI boat right now. I mean, that's been for a lot of ethical reasons, not because I think that it's a tool that couldn't be useful to us, but just the way that it's being used currently in kind of like the mass rollout that happened, and the level of mistrust that I think I personally have about a lot of the data that is coming through things like the large language model kind of tools. I have, that being said, I have used some AI tools to try to help with transcription of oral histories, which is incredibly challenging and tedious. And that has, it's been marginally successful. It certainly helped me get closer, but it didn't, none of them are 100% accurate or even
No.
90% accurate. It's like you still have to go in, you have to fact check, you have to listen, you have to, do all of the pieces. So I have used some tools in that capacity. I am pretty cautious about intellectual property. I'm pretty cautious about a lot of those pieces, which is why I have kind of been a little bit like, I'm going to wait and see before I step into this. So this project, with the class, I worked pretty closely with Miles's group and had them doing digitization. And I actually fed the menus through AiCR, and I was like, oh, this is really good because, I mean, it's typed text, but the only thing that I had to change or would have needed to change was formatting, in terms of line spacing, but otherwise it read it perfectly. And it was really impressive how fast it happened. And I know that's a piece of what you're doing is like fast document processing.
Yes.
So if one had, say, like a lot of like Google Books, and if you're scanning at a high volume, that sort of processing speed would be incredibly helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I think
haven't
I'm
done
going to
any
tell
big
you.
projects.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you, Kathleen, your skepticism on AI is fully understood. And we are on this journey as a society about exactly where that should be and what should be used for. And even when I talk to my clients and prospects, I always say, look, should not be solved as looked as a global solution. It should be extremely surgical to find very specific elements that it can do to help the process and become more efficient. But the reality of it is AI is not going away. It isn't.
Right.
But it is incumbent on all of us to use it the right way. And also the thing to your point, I say this all the time, AI is not 100% of the time. And if anyone says that it is, they're lying to you. But you can use it as a tool to be more productive, be more efficient, be more resourceful, whatever the case may be, to whatever liking that you would want. So I fully get that. So you run the library in the town? Is that true?
No, no, definitely not true. I am, my position here at UNE is I'm the education and outreach archivist in our special collections. So I take materials, like these documents, and I go to classes, and I give students hands-on learning opportunities, where they can do research in our materials. And I collaborate with professors. So Dr. DeCoster and I have worked together a lot, and other history professors, English professors, kind of a wide range of areas that I work in, but mostly humanities based. And students are doing research in a kind of a humanities lab setting, where they're getting the opportunity to feel the friction that is being a researcher. And now working with students doing digitization, I also direct internships, and so have had students do exhibits. And so we're looking at using digital tools to make those exhibits, but I also have them do like physical exhibits. So I really work with students to think about how to further their goals. Like, Miles and I are going to work together in the fall on a project. And, I really view myself as a resource person. I've been in this field for over 20 years, and started out as a volunteer and have done a whole bunch of different kinds of things, and worked with some very old documents and more modern. So I just try to share what I have learned and give the students the opportunities to kind of see what it's like to be in the historical record.
That's fantastic. Must be a very rewarding process that you're undergoing.
Most of the time, yes.
So, we've been talking about University of New England, but we haven't been talking about University of New England. Is anyone who wants to take that question? Who wants to talk about the school for even a minute or two to give us, what does it do? Where's it at? What's the focus? What's the student population?
Can I say something just kind of, well, from a historical perspective? Maybe I'll start there. So as the archivist person in the room, we are two different campuses in Maine. So we have, right now we're sitting on the Biddeford campus, which was the St. Francis College, and prior to that, high school. which was a Franciscan. It was basically to prepare Franciscan priests for, young men to go into the priesthood. And so this campus was founded in the 40s as a high school, and then became St. Francis College, which was pretty much going bankrupt, and so was joined together with the New England osteopathic. There was a group of osteopaths who wanted to start a college, and they joined together to create the University of New England. And then our Portland campus was founded in 1831 as Westbrook Seminary. And that campus operated as Westbrook through 1996, and then was taken over by UNE. So these two different campuses merged together to form the University of New England. And it started out as a, arts and sciences, kind of liberal arts education, and then has morphed more toward health care and science, those kinds of fields, but a lot of health professions. And we do a lot of interprofessional education. And I would say what we do in the humanities is a lot of thinking about how to make our work interdisciplinary, and thinking about the experiential elements of how we are helping students learn. I don't know what you maybe
So
want to say.
Miles, I'd love to hear your point of view. Miles, what's your point of view on all
I think one of the best things about UNE is that we're a relatively small school. So like the max size for a class is usually like 25, maybe a few more. It really allows you to get to know the professors well, and, allows you to take on projects like this, working, hands-on with materials. I used to be a marine biology major before I switched to history. And that is a big draw for the school. There's a lot of marine science students. But the switch was very different, because in marine biology you're working in a lab, and in history it's like you're lecturing, and then you get to do projects like these, which have made the class way more enjoyable than just sitting there and have someone talk to you the whole time. But I don't know, I really like it here. It's nice.
What year are you in right now?
I'm a rising senior.
Rising senior.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I see Jonathan posting all the time is look at all the jobs you can get with a history degree, because the question is, especially in this day and age, okay, where are you going to get a job after you go to school? And Jonathan, almost daily, right, Jonathan?
Sometimes.
Look at all these jobs.
I mean, and without false modesty, my goal over this past year was to post 3 times a week. And I've been able to do that. When I haven't, it's just because I've been preoccupied with other things. But I wanted to make that point that I can find 3 paid internships or jobs each week, almost all in New England, in the field of history, entry level, bachelor's degree only.
That is a very important thing, because a lot of people don't think that's an option. So has your students, Miles, have you taken advantage of?
I have personally
mentorship?
Not, but I hear my peers talking to me all the time. What are you going to do with a history degree? It's like, oh, that's pointless, that's useless. You're never going to make any money. But there's
that could be true.
But there's all sorts of options out there. I don't know for sure what I want to do yet. Maybe teaching one day, maybe working in a museum, maybe an archive. Who knows? I'm open to anything, So
I certainly didn't think in my life that I was going to become, I was not a history major, but I didn't go into my life thinking I'm going to become an archivist. That was a surprise to me. So, anything can happen.
I'm sure. I don't know if we have a great relationship with Lehigh University, and I was fortunate enough to have Patrick Zorro on our recent episode, and he's a teacher in the Master's of Financial Engineering, and we have a very strong relationship with Lehigh University. We get interns and we recruit out of that. And one of the things I learned a long time ago, having relationships between the university and commercial enterprises to be able to offer students opportunities to do internships is a huge win on both sides, or all three sides. The university is able to offer service, the business is able to get valuable young professionals, and the students are able to see what it's like in the real world and build relationships. So when they are able to graduate or ready to graduate, they have it all lined up. So Miles, if you haven't taken advantage of the internships yet, I would strongly advise you to do that.
I'm hoping to do one in the fall. So
good. That is super smart. Super smart. I gotta tell you one thing, and I want to ask you, Jonathan. Same question that I asked Professor Zorro. How do you get away or get around your students not using AI to do their homework or answer questions on your quizzes and whatnot? How do you get around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for me, there are two answers. And in some ways, we're going old school. And I've returned to, for introductory level courses, I've returned to in-class exams. I've stopped assigning out of class papers and things like that. But then these kinds of projects are the other answer. And I think certainly the more exciting and the more beneficial for the students, because AI cannot digitize these documents. AI cannot bring the former mayor of Biddeford onto campus to interview him, and AI cannot create databases, at least not the way we're doing it, cannot create databases and websites. And so that's another benefit of these projects, is that they're totally AI proof, because they're shaped by the students and they're shaped in the real world. So that's just another benefit for this approach to teaching, as far as I'm concerned.
That's fascinating, because I never would have thought about how to get around that. And it's so great to see that you're doing that, because we don't want AI, lemmings. We want people to actually use AI to help them, but not do it for them. So that's really good to hear that you're able to solve for it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the role of AiCR, if we think of that as an AI tool, do I really think it's important that the students learn how to transcribe the documents? Not inherently, right? Like, I don't think transcribing is inherently valuable. The product then is valuable. So I'm happy to have my students experimenting with different tools, so that the real learning is in the reading and the thinking and the talking to people, and what's the output going to be, and who's my customer, what am I trying to provide. So yeah, I mean, I think that's how you use AI as a tool to accomplish the task, rather than substituting for what you want the learning and the experience to be for the student.
Well, and also like that, you have to know what the right tool is. And sometimes you don't know that until you experiment with different things and you say, oh, actually this tool does this better, and this tool is kind of useless. And this, which you showed us in your comparison, which I think is, that takes human involvement and engagement of our intellectual curiosity to kind of think about what are we trying to do, and what accomplishes what we're trying to do.
And that's a skill that will be useful to you when you graduate.
Yes.
Is
Amen.
Making those choices and doing that kind of analysis.
Well, I can't thank all three of you enough for your time. Really enjoyed this conversation and your point of view. Now, I can tell you, Maine is one of the few states that I have not been to. And I've been telling Jonathan now for 5 years that I'm going to get up there and visit them. but life gets in the way. Now I have no choice in the matter because I have 3 people to visit when I go to Maine.
Bring the
Joe,
RV.
you got to come in the summer.
Yes, come in the summer.
Or September.
Yes.
September is also
Yeah.
lovely.
Yes, so the summer is going to work because my wife's a school teacher. She teaches first grade in the Bethlehem area school district. So that June, July, August is always a good time for us to go travel.
Yeah, and the snow
So-
might be gone by then.
The snow is gone. The snow is gone.
Anyway,
I'll give you a campus
you.
tour if you come by.
I can't wait. I'm going to take you up on that. So thank you for your time, all 3 of you, Jonathan, Kathleen, Miles. It's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to future conversations with you and seeing you in person. So for everyone that's watching, please, we are on LinkedIn. Follow us, follow me, follow AiCR. I know Jonathan's on LinkedIn all the time. How can they find you on LinkedIn?
Oh, I think I'm Jonathan DeCoster something.
Some
Some string of numbers. University of New England, Jonathan DeCoster should get you there.
Yeah, that's right. Kathleen, yeah, I think you're on LinkedIn as well, right?
I am, yeah. Kathleen Miller on.
Kathleen Miller. And Miles, please tell me you have a LinkedIn profile. Please tell me.
I do not yet. I need to make one.
We're gonna work on that.
Yes. When you leave this meeting, you're going to go right to your phone, which I know you have, and create a LinkedIn profile. All right. Anyway, everyone, I really appreciate your time you spent with us today. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. Until next time, have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.